And now it's time for the panel of the day. What's new? The latest storytelling trends in freelance journalism. So it's time to get inspired. In this panel, moderated by the multimedia journalist Aisha Salaudeen, freelance will discuss the advantages, the challenges, and also the benefits of working on on creative storytelling formats. Collaboration, community engagement, and innovation will be at the center of this conversation. So please welcome Aisha and our panelists, Fariba Nawa from the project Unspec Podcast, Nidheesh M K from the Hatiano project, Alberto Tetta from the Cyborg Queer project, and Laurence Ivil from the graphic novel Motherhood in Crisis. Welcome all, and the floor is yours.
Oh, hi everyone. This panel is about the latest storytelling trends in freelance journalism. So we have a fantastic panelists here. We're going to be talking about the new digital ways that freelancers are employing to tell amazing stories. We've got Fariba, Alberto, Laurence. Oh, it looks like there's someone that isn't here, or is that just my screen? Someone isn't here. Well, I mean, while we wait, we're going to start with the presentations, and that's where you all tell us about the amazing projects you're working on. I'm not sure who wants to go first. I can see Fariba first on my screen. So, Fariba, would you like to go first with your presentation? Tell us about the Unspec podcast.
Sure. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Fariba Nawa. I am a freelance journalist and have been for 22 years. And we started a podcast. It's a news and storytelling podcast called On Spec, Up Close from Far Away, stories that bring you closer to the world. We're still working on our tagline, so we're not crazy about this. If you have ideas, we'd love to hear from you. This is what we do a lot of times. We do audience engagement. So what are we? How did we start? Let me see. The focus statement here is not coming up. Okay, that's a bit slow, so stay with me here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
hello.
We can.
Okay, so Unspec provides risky deep dives in international news through storytelling from places like Brazil to Hong Kong to Malawi. We have reporters on the ground that will take you on these deep dives. The whole point of Unspec is to have the reporter as a character in the story, and they have to have an emotional connection. We work with local reporters a lot of times. We train them. So what makes us different from other news podcasts is that our perspective is different. Each season has a theme. We don't do parachute journalism, or we try not to. Our core staff does a lot of editing. And if they're from that area, then like I'm in Istanbul, but I'm not Turkish, but I still have been here for 6 years, so I can do a story from here that I'm personally connected to. But you can't just parachute in. We're trying to get away from the whole white gaze, male white correspondent who is the expert on the rest of the world. That's not our thing. And so who wants to listen to these stories? It's beyond people who are interested beyond their borders. And Europe has been a big target for us as an audience, specifically English-speaking audience. This is our new season has done really well. In fact, our listenership went up 3 times as much. And this was the topic you can see here. And we came up with it, and it's very timely. But also, what we weren't hearing is stories about what we were hearing is always Western related, and we wanted to go beyond that. We wanted to talk about how ordinary people are being impacted by it. So the way that we did this season, and it resonated, I call it our most innovative and ambitious season, is we brought together people on 2 sides of the information divide. We profiled them, and then we brought them together to talk to each other. And the climax of each episode was, are they going to get along? Are they going to find common ground? Or are they going to go their separate ways? So we had sort of like the so-called truth teller versus the disinformed talking to each other. And it was very hard because we wanted to not give a platform to more disinformation. So there were, in each episode, you'll see us debunking what one of the sides is saying, but it worked out really well. We just aired our last episode from the DRC. So I think that's the last slide, right? And so that's what Unspec is. And we started with 8 people. We're 7 people. We have an intern. And it's been exciting. We're going on to our 4th season. And I'm hoping that we'll carry through, we'll keep going. It's a freelance run, freelance everything. And it's really great. It's all about teamwork and collaboration. We do a lot of collaborations with other podcasts. I think that's been if we've been successful, that's how I see it. It's been a 2-year project, and the secret to our success is collaborating with other podcasts throughout the world. So.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful, Fariba. And I think it's interesting to know that you're also employing different storytelling formats within the podcast, like getting people who are informed and who are not as informed to talk to each other, and also just training local journalists so that they can tell stories in the way that you want to. So I think that's fantastic. Let's hear from Alberto, because I can see you next to my screen. Tell us about the Cyborg Queer project and what that is about.
2020, I've been working full-time as producer in a television channel. And then I left my job at the beginning of the pandemic. And thanks to COVID, I had the time to rethink about what I really want to do. And the question was what my community really needs from me as a queer journalist. So I began thinking how to tell LGBTI plus stories in a different way, far from the standard victimizing and stereotypical LGBT representation of the mainstream media. So thinking about my next project, I've asked my activist friends in Istanbul about what they need. And I think this is a simple and golden rule for participative projects and projects in general, because normally, like when you work in a mainstream channel as producer, you always look at video agencies, at other newspapers, other medias, but the most important thing is going there and ask what communities and the people you are speaking about are interested in, like which is the image they want to give about themselves and which are their priorities. So after different meetings, we decided together to resume, let's say, vital community initiatives suspended because of COVID pandemic. So first of all, we decided to look for answer to like an important problem in this moment. So which is the growing violence experienced by LGBTI plus people during the pandemic, both in their homes and in the street. And also we decided to begin a discussion about what a safe space mean for LGBTI plus people, and how to practically train the workers of LGBT friendly venues in Istanbul, so they take, let's say, an active role in making the space they work in safe and free. And we did that with a podcast series with practical tips from the activists to the workers of these venues. Then, like we organized two video forums, one about like self-defense and violence with people of the community which experience violence, and they discuss about what is self-defense for them, not just on a practical level, but also on a psychological and theoretical level. And also we organized a video forum, a shooting with workers, owners, and clients, let's say, of LGBT friendly places, to understand what the question was, what makes a safer place for you. But I want to speak a bit about the methodology. So we organize the work in an horizontal and anti-hierarchical way. So we work in assemblies where, as I said, we were collectively involving both LGBTI plus professional, both activists and also the people interviewed. So people interviewed, experts, shooting staff, have fully participated in this creative process. And this made the workflow, for sure longer, but more intense, but also very, very enriching and empowering. So the question I want to try to briefly answer, it's why participative projects are useful. They are taking time, but also they have advantages, as I said. So I think normally as freelance, we think and we are used to work by ourselves, and sometimes also there is a competition between ourselves, between each other, between freelance working on the same subject or in the same geographical area. So, but I think on the contrary, it's very important to work collectively, because you have constant feedbacks from the people involved about your work, and also it's to create a participative project. It's more important. It makes more easy to obtain funds, because how to say, participative and collective projects are more sexy, even for the mainstream, because stereotypical clickbait stories are getting boring even for them. So, but the most important thing, I think, when you go back to your communities, bar, assemblies, initiatives, then you understand you empowered LGBTI plus people involved in the project, because you give them responsibility and the right to speak about how they want to be represented, and that makes you feel proud. And I think this is a very important success. So then, just to end, I say that the team working at this process in this project then create a collective which is called Cyborg Queer, and now we are thinking about the next steps. So and we want to work about LGBTI plus media activism, but we don't want to be ourselves media activists, but the idea is to organize workshops for queers interested in media activism to allow them to become their own media. So that's our next step. I want just to end saying that we are in June, which is the most marvelous, sweetest, and empowering month of the year, I think. And as it is the LGBTI plus Pride Month, so happy Pride to each one of us.
I was going to say that because I can see the flag behind you as well. So it is kind of exciting. So thank you for telling us about, the Cyborg Queer project. Let's go to, oh God, please let me know if I'm saying your name wrong. Nidheesh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's right.
Oh, yeah, please let me know how to say it right. So just tell us about the Happy Anno project, what it's about.
Thanks everyone for inviting me. I'm told I have 3 minutes, so please let me know if I reach that limit. I'll introduce myself. I'm a journalist from India, from a small state called Kerala in the southern part of India, and I've been a journalist for a mainstream. I've been a journalist for 8-9 years now, and most of it was for one of the biggest financial dailies in India called Mint, and I was assistant editor there. During the pandemic, I quit. One, because I got a little bored of the fatigue associated with working for a publication for some time, and then I also got a great book project to do, so I quit. But then in March, the Election Commission of India, which is the apex body for announcing elections in India, announced a state election in southern India, which is it's an election in my home state, Kerala, and you might know this state from Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things, the Booker Prize winning novel. So I've covered one or two national elections and a couple of other state elections. So when this election was announced, that itch to get back to the field was there, and I couldn't resist it. So we thought what to do, and this is my first time working as a freelance journalist, independent journalist. So we thought what to do, and we figured out this is a great opportunity for us to try and experiment new stuff, which happens. Unlike in the West, it happens so rarely in India to an extent. We are a funny country where some of our biggest politicians are invested in the media, and some of our biggest media guys are invested in politics. So it's a cozy bet that they share. So many times we are not allowed to report something, or we are barred from searching for the truth, and we have our limitations. So we thought this is the first time, hey, we don't have an editor to bar us from doing something, so we can do absolutely crazy stuff. So we launched this project called Happy Ano. Happy Ano in Malayalam means are you happy? Ano means are you. So this started as a way for us to explore. In many of these pre-poll surveys, they ask the question, what's the mood of the nation? So this was another way for us to ask that same question, but in different parameters. So what we did is, it's on the second slide. We went on a road trip across the state, and there were like four of us. Three did the shoot and production stuff. The one person did all the edit. So on this trip, we realized there are so many stories out there that are not covered in the mainstream news business. And this was also a road trip, so it was very fun for us to do this thing. And we converted the entire thing custom made for social media. What happens in India is there is an audience like you have in the West. There is an audience here who has watched, who has grown up, watching MTV and has now watched House of Cards, who is addicted to Netflix, who know the big brands like Vice, Vox, and all that. They subscribe to Nanviti sometimes, and so they know the production quality of stuff that happens in the West. But there are hardly any media guys here who do things for social media. Who sometimes social media news here is sometimes like an afterthought. You do something for TV or for the print, and then as an afterthought, you node your head to social media, Instagram, Twitter, and all, and you create something there. So we didn't want to do that. We wanted our entire road trip to be tele visualized in a custom made for social media thing. So we created an Instagram handle. Out of the four, two came from the print journalism background. One came from a little bit of TV, digital production background. So we know what quality we have to like aspire to. So we were very clear on we didn't compromise on quality. Even if we are doing a 1 minute story, we packaged it so well that so that it's palatable to an Instagram audience. And it were many people told us there were stories that these are stories that they actually wanted to see on the news side. So it was a big thing for us. After the trip, towards the end of the trip, I think we had like three big takeaways. One was we realized this whole convention of editors dictating news. In most of the time, India's national media sends their big guys to the ground during election season, because election season apparently aggravates all those inequalities in the society. So they send it's like a parachute journalism. The big guys will come in, they'll stay for a 2 day, and they'll go back to Delhi, the capital, and produce something that they think is worth the news. Here we had an opportunity to serve the audience in a way that they seem, when we asked the question, happy Ano, or are you happy? They interpreted it in different ways. They interpreted it as a question about their bank balance, or as about their health situation, given COVID has changed everyone. They interpreted it as a way, as a question about their present government. They interpreted in ways that we never expected them to talk about. We got women talking to us about sanitary pads. We got women talking to us about moving to a city life, but shackled by a village mentality on certain things like morality and all. We got men talking to us about petrol prices. These are stuff that we never really thought would be like too important for the public, but that happened. We could publish sort of a lot of stories which went under the radar, which later got picked up by organizations like Reuters. And we kind of broke even by having an established media outlets coming to us and using our content for their distribution, so that in that way our content got distributed in a wide area, and we got some money out of that also. But that means, I guess, whatever stone you can throw at the big media business, they like the sole of the shoe ground reporting stuff. And since they were not doing it, since they are doing more into this Facebook desktop journalism, they came to us when we started doing this ground reporting. They came to us and asked us if we could share our content. We were happy to do it. That's all. I'll happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I was literally about to interrupt you and say time's up. We'll get to the questions. Thank you for telling us about the Happy Annual Project. I think it's a very interesting approach and obviously creates results. So I love that. Let's go to Laurence, who's going to talk to us about, I think you co-authored it, the graphic novel Motherhood in Crisis. So yeah, tell us about that.
Hi, everyone. Just to start off with saying, yeah, I'm super happy to be here. It's a real pleasure to be invited to talk with everyone. So yeah, I'll try and keep this quick. What is Motherhood in Crisis? A bit of context, in Sierra Leone, 1 in 10 women die during childbirth over the course of their lifetimes. Healthcare systems are fragile and have been further strained by concurrent crises, Ebola and now COVID-19, and access to basic maternal health treatment is often limited. Globally, maternal health stories to this day are often underreported. And in this graphic novel, 4 women from Sierra Leone, Memunatu, Hila, Kadiatu, and Tete, share their journeys of hardship and trauma and survival in a country where falling pregnant effectively means risking death. The novel is a mobile-first graphic novel published by Al Jazeera in October 2020, and it was funded by fan favorites, the European Journalism Centre, through their health reporting grant for Germany. Just to speak again about sort of what's unique about this particular novel, so it employs a first-person narrative approach based on transcripts from multiple interviews conducted by myself and my team, who I'll talk about in a second. So it very much centers the words and the lived experiences of these women, and the stories also include photography where appropriate and videos with experts talking about the context and the background around these individual stories. On to the next slide. So why comics? Well, the graphic novel format fits this subject very well for a number of reasons. And I just wanted to mention really that, these women who told their stories to us, they display great strength, but they're also sharing their most vulnerable moments. And all of them have experienced different forms of trauma. And, a graphic novel can be a less intrusive way to visualize stories that are otherwise hard to document sensitively. You can visualize historical moments and center the experiences of those involved, in this case, the women and girls. And, comics have been proven to build empathy and understanding. And I think that's a really important point here, trying to make these stories comprehensible to wider audiences. And the key point I've written there as well is, that you can find value through ethical co-creation and participatory storytelling. When I talk briefly about the team, I'll go into that in a little bit more depth. This is a mobile format, and typically graphic novels are formatted for desktop, but the majority of readers across West Africa, they use mobile, and we wanted to reach those audiences. And you can see here, that's the team involved. So myself, Alicia Praga, my partner in crime from Austria, and Saidu Bar, fantastic journalist in Sierra Leone who we work with on the stories. We, as a freelance group, we felt that it would be better to work with a slightly more established illustration studio to ensure that it was a kind of collaborative effort, particularly during the pandemic as well. And so we worked with Comic Republic and their principal artists, Samuel Iwunze and Eukaria, the colorist. And projects like this, they're complicated, they're intense, even more so during the pandemic. And you have to work so closely with local partners. And you can see the list of the key players there: Advocate, which is a prison charity, the Aberdeen's Women's Centre, who work with women who have experienced obstetric fistula, which is the centre of one of the stories, and some other initiatives there. And of course, we worked with Al Jazeera, with Mohammed and Samaya. Can't recommend them highly enough. And there are so many things you can talk about when it comes to graphic novels and how to make them work and how to make them as participatory and collaborative as possible. And yeah, I don't think I have enough time to go into that. So all I will say is, please reach out if you have any other questions. And we're also looking to present some Creole versions of the novels as well, because they're essentially in English. So thanks very much for listening.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's such fantastic work. You guys are all doing like amazing. And that brings me to my first question. We've talked about comics, podcasts, social media. For the Cyborg Queer project, it's pretty much everything. YouTube, you're everywhere. So this just lets me know that we have different newer trends in storytelling, especially as freelancers. I'm just going to start with Fariba. Can you very quickly tell me what you think is driving this new trends in storytelling?
There's, a lack of trust in mainstream media, a hunger for innovation, a need for stories about communities that are not seeing themselves in the news. And, and I think there's a need to hear more about solutions rather than just bad news. That's, I think, what's driving this.
Okay. Alberto, do you have an answer as well?
Okay, I agree. With Fariba. Actually, I think there is a general need of a more democratic and story-based journalism. So the starting point is that TV is a one-way passive media where you can't choose what you watch. At the most you can do is change channel. But on the contrary, podcast, visuals, comics make it possible to imagine yourself a part of the story. I think this is very important. And then, as a viewer, to imagine a part of the story makes you living a deeper experience. So actually, for me, like 5 or 6 years ago, we were all speaking about immersive journalism, transmedia projects, 3D videos. But actually, for me, this idea of augmented reality wasn't successful as we thought. On the contrary, I think things develop in a much more different way. And actually, what we need is a reduced reality, which gives more space to viewer imagination and brings more involvement.
Okay, no, that's fantastic. Makes a lot of sense. What about you, Nidheesh? Any additions? What do you think is driving this storytelling trends?
I hate to put things in a listicle, but on top of my head, 2 things. One, there is a genuine shift in the way people see journalists, especially in third world countries and developing nations. India, for example, is a youth-heavy population. They're looking for perspectives more than analysis or just reporting. They need someone like a friend who can join them in a party or on the street and explain them to things. And second, I think they expect a lot more than the traditional news presentation. They expect a lot more art than there is. It's not for nothing that some of the biggest Indian news organizations have far lesser followers on Insta or Twitter than some of the very niche creators here. You'll see a YouTube influencer here who is having a far greater following than any of the Indian news channels or Indian newspapers, and it's there for a reason. There is art in those in those creations, whereas journalists or the news organizations are catching up to these digital trends. So in Happyano, for example, we tried our best to not compromise on quality. We used DSLR, we used Sony 7 and Alpha 7, and we used lapel mics connected to a recorder and all that, so that we don't compromise on quality. And we expect our readers or our audience, I think, expect that quality from us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Laurence, what about you?
Well, I mean, I think from my perspective, it's this push and pull, right? I think that there's this recognition now within newsrooms that they have to adapt, that people won't accept some of the more traditional forms, although there's absolutely a place for them. And, it's the hill on which a lot of reporters and journalists, would die. But I think that from my perspective, stories that are participatory, that center the lived experiences of people who can share their experiences, are at the center of the kind of best form of journalistic practice right now. And I mean, I think that, all of these projects are fantastic examples of that. I will add that as this is a freelance assembly, that, a lot of the onus is on the freelancer to kind of bend and work incredibly hard to redirect the ship, and I think that has to be taken into account, because, I wouldn't want to suggest that a graphic novel like this comes without cost, or that it's easy to produce. It takes a lot of time, and the cost, both personal and financial, associated with doing it to the standard that you need to isn't small. So I think that it's absolutely worth it. But it's also a bit of hard work as well.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing is people want to connect better with young people. It's also important to get your message across on social media. What else did I write? You're connecting with people, trying out new platforms, and the world is going more digital as well. So it just makes sense to follow that trend. Now, specific question for you, Fariba. I know audio podcasts compared to, say, TV requires a lot more storytelling because you can't really visualize what you're saying. So I want to know, how do you balance telling super good stories like you do with also getting people engaged?
Well, I think the podcast community is very organically a very natural, a very collaborative community. So I've noticed that people who read don't necessarily listen, and people who listen don't necessarily read or watch videos. Everybody has their own consumption. So what you want to do for what we've done with Unspec is you have to have a niche audience. And I think, I'm not sure which one, I think Alberto said this, you really need to know what what your listeners want. So we've done surveys of what, we did what we called empathy interviews of what our audience wanted from us. And it's really important to engage through that's the thing. We've done a lot of engagement on social media, empathy. Even on my own social media, I'm always asking questions, just like I did when I started my presentation. I was like, we're not crazy about our tagline. Help us come up with a new tagline. Make your audience feel like they're part of making this podcast with you, because it's actually for them. Thinking of it as a product, actually. And it's also news, right? So having a point of view, the motto in the podcast industry is, if you're making a podcast for everyone, you're making a podcast for no one. So I have a very distinct POV or point of view that you're going to have as a target audience. So what we did is look at our analytics of who was listening from where, and we decided to sort of match it with what top-down trends there were. We wanted an audience from the global English-speaking audience from the global South. So and then we looked at the trends. There is a hunger in the global South for podcasting. There is a demand for slow news, documentary style. We started to target people who listen to documentaries for fun. So people who want to be informed as well as entertained. And we discovered that women are the most listeners in big cities. So that's how you kind of create your product, as well as tell us the news, of course. We're still speaking truth to power. That hasn't changed. I think that's where you have to meet the two, be able to match your audience with with what you're trying to produce and with the purpose you have. So that this has been a lesson, and it's been a training process. We've learned.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. To tailor your podcast to a particular audience or niche. You can't make a podcast for everyone. I never thought about it that way, so this is super insightful for me. Thank you for that. Laurence, you're up next. Question. I don't know why you're smiling. It's contagious. Anyway, so you're doing a fantastic job. You've done a fantastic job rather with the graphic novel, and I know like it's helping to protect these vulnerable women. It's also telling the story in a different way. It's fun, it's exciting. But I'm sure it comes with its challenges. One would be just not a lot of people, depending on the part of the world, like in Africa, where you have covered, this, not a lot of people have access to the internet. So how do you combat the challenge of getting people to really view this visually? Some people don't even have smartphones. Like, any tips for how you were able to counter this challenge?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, I think first I would go back to one of Fariba's answers, which is that, you have to be defined in who your audience is and what you're doing. And I think that as a freelancer, you have to be realistic about the resources that you have at your disposal as well. And I mean, our intention with this project from the beginning was to work with local communities, and to be participatory, to work with a West African artist. And we're already doing a lot of things there that are not necessarily normal in the practice of news development. And I think that being said, for us, we wanted it to be, in collaboration with Conversations with Al Jazeera, we wanted it to be on mobile because, as I said in my presentation, mobile is the primary means through which people receive news online across sub-Saharan Africa. Now, the majority of graphic novels are presented in a non-mobile format, right? And so this was already a slightly radical or different approach that was trying to cater to reach more audiences. On top of that, I mean, speaking exclusively to graphic novels, of course, you can have voiceovers, you can have audio. When we worked initially on the concept, we wanted to launch it with a Creole version and an English version. Because of the pandemic, because of the realities of the challenging production process, it just wasn't something that we were able to deliver at the end. And so a thing that we are doing is we're working with the partner organizations that we collaborated with on these stories to hand over the comics to them in Creole, that they can print, that they can share with those who they're working with, And I mean, people would say, is there a balance of kind of like journalism activism there? Because there is a fine line. But I fundamentally believe, and Alicia and the others who worked on this project, is that, when you put this much effort into creating something, you should just share it and get it out there and get it to as many people who can benefit and be influenced by it. So that would be my answer to that, really. I think there are tips and tricks, but the central answer I would have is don't do it alone. And just be honest about what you're capable of doing and collaborate wherever possible.
Okay, it's fantastic and it's really good work. So I'm glad that it's being printed as well and also being distributed, because I feel like it's just really great work. So next I'm going to Nidheesh. You chose social media, particularly Instagram, for this project. I'm sure, and you've given us a bunch of reasons, but I really want to know, you chose it right, it's going great, but tell me about the impact that social media has had on the Happyano project, in terms of both the benefits and challenges. How has it impacted your work?
It's like a two-way street, I guess. On the one hand, we were getting impacted a lot. I'm talking about beyond general things that would happen if you create something for social media, something like immediacy and authority and stuff like that. But beyond that, there were like two major things. One, we were getting instant reactions from the people, from our audience, and that on many occasions it changed our reporting also. I'll give you one example where in a northern district we tried to interview some young guys, and these are like very fashionable young guys who have worked in the Dubai gold market, came back to Kerala with a lot of cash, and they have a pushy lifestyle. Now we interviewed them. They had a set of things to say about how their life is, how happy they are. By the time we were about to return from that district, we got a message from a psychiatry student, a woman, a girl from the same district, telling us that if you get out of town talking only about this man's world, it'll be a mistake. It's a fool's paradise. There are women here who live in in a different world. You should interview us also. We rerouted our vehicle and went to a house. We interviewed her. So, and she gave us a completely, it's almost like these two people are like in two different universes. She gives a completely different parallel universe. Second, I would say, for the audience. The first one was for us. The second for the audience. I think nobody in India makes serious content for Instagram. It's taken for granted that this Instagram is a youth-heavy platform. They don't pay attention to serious issues, but it's not. You just don't make content for them. You just don't make serious issues in a very authoritative way that you make for in the print journalism or in television journalism. You don't make that kind of a content in social media. We touched upon issues like communal harmony. We touched upon issues like minimum wage. We touched upon issues like women in a metro. And it's just that we just had to make it in a way that's true to good journalism. You have to be accurate, you have to be fair, you have to be but you don't have to be neutral also. You can take sides, but you have to be fair. So we did that, and the youth simply followed us. So I think we broke that concept in here that youth don't take serious journalism very well. They're only driven to these platforms for the sake of entertainment, for the sake of jokes, and all that. That was another takeaway for us, and that's how I think social media is evolving here. Also, after our project, there were similar projects that were happening, and we talked to them, and they were all interested in making the space a little more worth for the time we spend there.
Okay, that's interesting because I know that with social media, there are different ways to look at it. The impacts can be challenging or just super positive. So I wanted you to touch on both angles. Thank you for that answer. So Alberto, with Cyborg Queer, right, I read about it and it's just a lot. So there's the training programs, there's the self-defense, there's you telling stories, there's YouTube. It feels like a lot, and it feels like choosing these platforms was deliberate. So I want to know why. You could have gone traditional with TV or radio or something, but there's just a bit of deliberateness, I can sense it. So why that? I want to understand. I guess what I'm asking is your thought process when all of you, the entire team, was coming up with the ideas for Cyborg Queer.
Yeah, I think so. Why we decide to develop this project digitally? Yeah, I think there was for sure because of COVID pandemic, which made physical contact events much more difficult. We didn't have much alternatives in doing so. In a way, this global pandemic became a possibility to transform the way we were working. So as I said, I was working in medias on television and stuff, and we learned it by from the LGBT community, which reorganized itself during COVID, mainly organizing events, but even parties or gatherings or even protests. For example, the last Istanbul Pride was organized online. It was an online Pride. It was very interesting, to see how you could queerize the cyber space in a way. And how you can organize a pride online. So, looking at their experience, also we decide to reshape our way of working. Also, I think so. I can say that since the physical contact were missing, also we were missing a space of discussion. Yes, we have Zoom meetings, or I don't know, we can with my telephone or video chats, but we needed kind of to reproduce the idea of shared space where we were chatting about issues related with the community in a natural way. So we kind of organized these forums, which were kind of an hybrid because the people invited were physically present in a space, but also it was built in an interactive way. Also to kind of mix. Also the Cyborg Queer, it's a lot about this mixed situation, physical and cyborg and virtual. So to mix a physical presence and a physical discussion with a virtual environment. So I think the answer of your question, it's more, I don't know, we didn't have many other alternatives in doing so, but we kind of take it as a possibility to reshape and organize our work in a new way.
Okay, no, that's a really good answer. There was a pandemic, so you really had to just make the best use of the resources that you had within your disposal. I was just super curious because everything was like well curated. I'm like, I need to ask him about his thought process. So the final question for everyone, I really was going to ask everyone like, why? What did I write? What should we look? So yeah, I was gonna ask why we need to look into different storytelling formats, but to be honest, we've sort of answered that question in the course of this entire conversation. So if that's okay with you all, I want to change it to the things that we need to know as freelancers before choosing storytelling formats. We've established in this conversation that you have to, figure out who you're telling the story to, your niche, things like that. So I think it would be, interesting to get tips or advice on the things that we should really consider before choosing whatever format it is we want. So perhaps for Fariba, you can tell me about the things people should consider before starting podcasts. Does that sound good? Thank you. Okay,
can you hear me now? Okay,
yeah.
So a storytelling podcast is a lot of work. What people don't understand is how much work goes into it. It's not like you just get a microphone, sit in front of it. And I don't mean to degrade podcasts that are a Q&A. That's also, it depends on the quality, but there are a lot of podcasts out there. If you want quality podcasts, it is extremely time consuming. Audio, my background is in print and I've learned audio. Audio just has so many layers to it that you have to take into account the time. We made a video about the process of making an on-spec episode, and it was one of the most popular videos because people had no idea. It takes months to put together one of our episodes. It's making, it's an entire production of a half-hour documentary, and you want it to be quality. So it's costly. So what we do is we go to a lot of friends and even family members to do voiceovers for us because we're doing international news. We're not just doing English. And it's just been a lot of skills sharing. Those of us on the team speak a lot of different languages, so we'll step in and translate. And then local partners, like I think you spoke about it, but the Sierra Leone project, we do depend on our local partners a lot. For this season, we hired out freelancers. For the previous seasons, it was in-house. It's easier when it's in-house. When you have a trained team, when you're working outside, your process has to be streamlined. You have to have templates for everything, explaining it to the outside world or the outside freelancers. This is how it works. There's an entire, everyone I work with, even audio reporters who've done BBC RFI stories for 3 to 5 minutes, they don't understand the commitment to time that it takes to make audio documentary. And so they get frustrated, and we've had to explain that, and come up with like a very streamlined process and workflow. So that's one thing about podcasting. The other one is that to be as conversational and natural as possible. It's not, you have to be different than public radio, and you have to find that voice. But again, who's your audience? The podcast you make, that's the number one lesson, is who's your audience. And when you start to develop an audience, how do you give them what they need, as well as produce the news and journalism that you want to? So that's a constant challenge for us. One of the things I want to talk about that I didn't get to talk about is the challenge. Because we're global, it's very hard to find that audience, because people will come in for that one episode that's about DRC or Hong Kong or India, and then they leave. So it has to be people. That's why we said it's for people who are interested beyond their borders. So sort of a BBC audience who are yearning for an independent perspective. So again, we keep selling the independent perspective because that's what we are. But we keep pushing that out there. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. And because we don't have any more time, I'm going to need you guys to answer this same question for your project in literally 30 seconds, please. So Laurence, just what are the things that people should know before, trying to tell stories through graphic novels? Just super quick.
all I would say is just reach out to people that have done it before, and because there's far too many things that I need to say. But working with editors who are interested in the medium, it's still controversial and or has less respect in some areas. So just getting those editors on board early, having the artists defined early, but also having flexibility to adapt to the stories. But if you've got any questions, just please reach out to me on Twitter or via email, and I'd be happy to answer any of those questions.
Okay, thank you. Nidheesh, what about you?
Since we don't have time, I'll leave that answer in 3 words: funding, funding, funding. In a developing nation, coming from a developing nation and wanting to documentaries like HBO, Vice, or Netflix, to achieve that same level of quality, there's only actually one barrier: funding. I don't think we guys are any short of ideas than those in the West, or any short of technology or access than those in the West. It's only the funding. And if you want to do good journalism, I think you really can't take the business away from it. It requires funding. I've covered entire South India for a national election, exactly half the amount of what I did for Happy Anno project, because my editor asked me to travel only in public transport, spend as less money as possible. And by the time I got to my office after that, I still had my monthly salary there. But in Happy Anno, I spent double that amount. By the end of it, I had no salary in my bank balance, and you had to prepare for the worst. I lost my entire footage for a day. My wife had a miscarriage in between. All those things happened, and you had to go to prepare for all this, and you have to take care of your balance. I don't want any of you guys to listen to this and go pauper off this. So please be careful about the funding element. Yeah.
Super, super important. Alberto, do you think you can answer this in 30 seconds?
Simple answer. In every project, you should first think about your project aim and the target group you want to reach, and just then, according to that, choose the format you will use. So, because every target group can be reached in a different way, and every audience and project has different ideal storytelling format. So, really, you should choose the best storytelling format to reach your audience according to the project's main aim, which should come at the beginning of your project design.
So thank you all of you. I know it was very difficult to talk about your projects in so little time, but thank you for inspiring us with all the passion that you have for your different storytelling formats and for your stories. So thank you very much for that. Thank you very much, Aisha, for your moderation. And with this amazing session, we finish our Freelance Journalist Empowerment Conference. Really, thank you for being with us the last 3 days. I know it was intense, but we had amazing sessions. But the most important is your participation, and just seeing you connecting, seeing you learning new strategies, new practices that can empower and connect in the community was just breathtaking. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And Stella, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, and I don't have much to add. Just, stay tuned and keep your eyes open for any new things that are coming from the Freelance Journalism Assembly in the coming time. We are very thankful that you were here. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you to everyone who contributed in the chat. That made it much more lively and rich. And I feel very happy, and I hope to see you next time.
See you next time. Remember, you are amazing and an amazing community. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Labdien. Buenos días. Buenos días.
Hi. Hello.
This is the European Journalism Center.
Since 1992,
we've been helping journalists all over Europe.
Now we ask for your support.
Join the European Journalism Collective.
And with a small donation, you can help us remain independent and sustainable.
So we can continue supporting journalists just like you.
And do even more.
And do even more.
And do even more.